Hello everyone, I am joined today with Kenny Wheeler, who has very kindly joined us for our part of our annual event on transitions from primary to secondary school. And Kenny's very kindly joined us to give us a bit of an overview and a bit more of an understanding for parents who are potentially, looking to go through the transition period or who are going through it at the moment. So Kenny, did you want to just introduce yourself and just sort of say who you are and maybe a little bit about what SAFE is and how you've come to this, really?
Sure. Thanks, Leanne. So my name's Kenny Wheeler. I'm the inclusion lead for SAFE. SAFE is a separate organisation. We work with Surrey on behalf of Surrey occasionally. We carry out some of their school improvement functions, and we make sure that schools are supported, and if there are any concerns that they're addressed. But we do work in conjunction with Surrey, so we carry out things like the SENCO network meetings to help ensure SENCOs are updated with local, regional and national developments, and we also run training workshops just to upskill SENCOs and school leaders. So very much we see ourselves as the glue. We've got the schools, we've got Surrey, and we're very much supporting schools to continually improve.
Brilliant. So that's really great, and I think it's great to have you talking about this, because sometimes it's hard to get the different perspectives on where it comes from a school and then the local authority and in what parents are doing. So what we're hoping to do with our event is kind of get a bit from everybody to just give that overall picture to really help parents, because it's a tricky time, isn't it? The transition and the preparing and the unknown. And I know for me personally, when my eldest was transitioning, and it just felt really big, because primary schools quite often are quite small, aren't they? And they're quite, not always, but a lot of them are 1 form entry or 2 form entry, and then a lot of secondary schools are just huge, and it just feels massive. So I guess we're just hoping to really give parents that preparation of what to expect and what to do. So what kind of things would you expect from a primary school and a secondary school?
I think there's some basic things. I think you were going to talk later on about what do we do in general, and then what do we do for children with special needs. But yeah. I just think it's having key contacts. So who's going to be the head of year 7? Who's going to be the form tutor? So as soon as that's possible, sharing that information, so there's a point of contact. You've got someone hopefully you can meet before the term starts, just because, like you say, Leanne, you're going from possibly a 1 form intake that you've been at for 7 years to a larger sometimes 6, 8 or 10 form intake. So you'll have more children in your year group than you would have had in your whole school, and you're going to be changing lessons a lot, different environment. So what can we do to try and reassure people so that summer holidays are an enjoyable, relaxing experience rather than anxiety filled because we're moving to a new environment?
No, it's really, really tricky, and I think for parents, I guess I know for me, when she first went there, it was that going from the lessons to lesson to lesson, whereas they normally just have one teacher, and maybe they have a different PE teacher, but all of a sudden you've got all those teachers. And I guess for there are parents whose children do have additional needs and disabilities. A lot of the anxieties we hear are, well, how do all the teachers know about my child's needs? And I guess, how can parents sort of make them aware of that, when they are changing those lessons all the time? And I guess what do schools do in that respect to make sure that everyone's on board with it? I guess it varies from school to school, I'm sure.
It's naturally going to vary from school to school. I think part of it is a communication issue. and how do we share key information but succinctly. And the challenge is that some schools might, if it's an 8th form intake, those teachers are receiving 240 new students. How do we make sure that they're aware of the needs of those learners? Because even some of the pupils who haven't been identified with SEND are going to have individual learning needs.
Absolutely,
Need to be aware of. So part of that would be communication systems. How do we brief the year 7 teachers so that they're familiar with the needs? But also, it's the needs were the ones that presented in primary school. They might change in secondary school. So part of it is just we'll make our teachers aware, but also we'll encourage them to keep an eye out and monitor the situation, because some children might settle in amazingly well and others might not. So part of it, that first term really is an information gathering exercise on what can we find out about individuals and how they access learning and in some of it, it's not saying, well, they need to go on the SEN list, but part of it might be what little tweaks and adjustments can we make in order to help them settle in and engage better.
Yeah. And thinking about transition, so when should it sort of start, and what might it look like? And I know it's going to be very different from school to school, but in terms of that kind of preparation, when would that likely to start?
I think once you know what school you're going to go to, could we start it then? I mean, rather than leaving it too long, I mean, are there opportunities? I know that during open days you would have visited the school that you're going to attend, but I mean, in that respect, did you meet all the staff? Possibly not. So are there transition events that we can hold during the year? So rather than just those induction days that sometimes happen in the summer term, are there opportunities before then to visit the school and just see it in a different light? Because obviously seeing it on an open day or an open evening is quite different to a normal school day.
And I think for the young people as well, isn't it? It's quite hard, isn't it, seeing it an open day, because obviously they quite often have different things set up and it's very busy and everyone's around, but actually seeing it, you know, with the students in the classroom and everything like that, I think, you know, that's really useful for the children and the parents, but, you know, to see, you know, what is it going to be like during that, you know, during the normal day.
And I think, I mean, just a little bit of background before people think I don't know what I'm talking about. I was a SENCO for 11 years in 2 different secondary schools. So I've been through the transition process. And whilst you can have a standard approach, I mean, there were some pupils who we knew way in advance that they had high levels of anxiety. So part of it, we did a staggered transition. So on some occasions, they came after school so that they could walk around the school when there weren't any students there or less students there, and then see it in a quieter environment. And then that's an orientation exercise so that they can get a feel for it, and then build up so that maybe once or twice they came during the school day to actually see what it's like. So that tiered approach. So rather than bang full in, let's look at it without students, let's look at it with students and go from there.
No, that sounds like a really sensible, you know, sort of way, especially for those with high anxiety. So if there was a child and, you know, parents are listening to that, would that be the kind of thing you'd advise them to have the conversation with the school, just to, you know, explore the options and see what, you know, potentially they can offer with that?
I mean, obviously there'll be time pressures, but it's just it could be half an hour just at the end of the school day, once possible meetings are finished. Let's just do a wander around the school and ask questions, because it's better that the questions are posed before the child starts rather than certain things surfacing afterwards in September.
Yeah, no, absolutely, and that's something I was going to ask you about, because thinking about if a parent is concerned that how about their, you know, how their child's going to cope, how is that, you know, how's the best way to go about communicating that? Because I think as a parent it can feel quite overwhelming, especially if you feel quite comfortable with your primary school, and you know, and then all of a sudden there's this whole new school, and it's about what you know. I know a lot of parents think, well, I don't want to feel like I'm being a pain, or you know, I don't want to feel like I'm being that parent. We hear quite a lot as well, which I've always felt like that parent. And it's how do they communicate with, you know, effectively, to make sure that it's, you know, the relationship is built in a positive way, I guess.
Well, I guess the starting point would always be the form tutor. And you've got the form tutor there who's that point of contact, who's going to see that individual every day. So what are they seeing? You know, sometimes there's the opportunity just to check in before the school day and before it starts. So we'll have that check-in, how we're doing, and just go through a few strategies to help the young person become regulated or ready to learn. So yeah, the form tutor would be there. You've obviously going to have a SENCO, but it might be, let's think about what the pastoral team can do first. Every school's got a pastoral team. There'll be a head of year who have an understanding of what's going on, and then it might progress at some point to the SENCO. But the form tutor would be that first point of contact.
No, and I think what I'm getting from this is really just go and have those conversations, because I think that's the real key thing, isn't it, to starting to build that relationship with them. So I think it's you know, it's important that you sort of make that step and just, you know, just sort of say it if you've got the concerns, you know, share them.
And those so before the young person starts in their new setting, you've got an opportunity. So if the young person was on the SEND register, if they're at SEN support or in EHCP, then what works for them, and that can be shared with the SENCO beforehand. I just think, I mean, a lot of schools will have some kind of brochure on what happens in secondary school, what's a normal school day. To share that beforehand might be useful. And the other thing that has been quite interesting is taking photographs of key areas. So if the young person is not able, so just like, this is the canteen, this is the sports area, these are some of the classrooms, just so that they can have visuals to get them to have them something for them to refer back to during the summer when they're not in the building.
And actually that worked really, really well with my youngest, because she was very, very anxious, and the summer holiday, I think any summer holiday, to be honest, I think the summer holiday is always a transition point, whether, you know, actually, so anyone listening to this video, you know, there's a massive transition from going from one class to another class, a different teacher, you know, and for children who are anxious and have got, you know, varying needs, it can be really, really hard. And actually we had like a book with all the different, you know, this is my teacher, this is my classroom, this is where I put my coat and peg, and it was really, really helpful and just offered that kind of reassurance. And actually that was, I think, quite often I've heard, and I don't know, but that's the primary school would often get involved with that, with the work with the secondary school to sort of build on that.
Yeah, I part of it would be, I know that historically there were certain additional transition events laid on for children who were anxious. So they did it as a special focus group, where a group of young people would come in and they'd just have an afternoon in the setting. Again, it all depends on the communication between the primary school and the secondary school, but also acknowledging some secondary schools have 20 or 30 feeder schools, so there's a lot of information. I mean, the one thing that I would say is that we would hope that secondary schools go into the primary school and have that information sharing, so they'll know when they've got children who are going to come to their secondary school. So are they using that? That's an opportunity. We're going to visit you in your setting.
Yeah.
and your teachers are going to tell us some key information about the children that are joining us, so that we're aware in advance of any dynamics we need to be aware
Yeah.
of,
Yeah.
or any learning strategies, but something that's going to impact on the individual, because if we can prepare for it, then we
Yeah.
can plan for it,
Yeah. Yeah.
and have that support in place.
No, that sounds really, really good. And I think actually them coming into the primary school also sort of, it just helps with reassurance of that anxiety, and actually having someone come into your safe space is actually, but to sort of build on that and build those relationships is really, really important, isn't it? So
Yeah, and it'll give the young person a familiar face. So
absolutely.
this is going to be the person that you're going to see in September. So at least you've got that kind of reassurance that you'll go there.
Yeah.
Like that first day, you've got someone who's there, who's positive, and who knows about you.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And in terms of, I guess from a school's perspective, what kind of things would be helpful for parents to do to aid the transition of this kind of stage?
That's a good question, Leanne.
So I'm just thinking of things like, is there anything like, I don't know, like self-help skills, or, you know, sort of building on things that perhaps they haven't done at primary that they might do at secondary? I just, yeah, it just struck me when I was thinking about it, but just thinking, because obviously that we've talked a lot about what the school does, but I'm just thinking what we as parents can do to sort of support that.
Yeah, what works at home, because there might be some effective strategies you use at home that the school might be able to adopt. Equally, could the end of year 6 be a good time to update your one-page profile? If your child's got a one-page profile, can we know a little bit more? In some of the work I do with schools, one-page profiles aren't always that helpful.
No, absolutely. Yeah. And having that kind of real up-to-date information. Yeah. No, and I mean, and thinking of things like, even just, I guess, because I'm just thinking of primary school, so they don't sort of carry their stuff around, whereas at secondary school they do. So I guess it's just at home, perhaps helping them get used to those kind of things, and you know, like traveling to school and all those different things. I guess I know with mine, you know, using the sort of summer holidays to try and practice all those, you know, practice those skills as much as you possibly can to sort of get used to it. I would imagine is probably quite useful to, you know, to support that.
Definitely getting into routines, and what's the morning going to look like, and that idea about packing your bag the night before. So whether we put a timetable on the fridge, so that we, you know, when we're having dinner in the evening, or in the evening, we're looking that you got history tomorrow, you got geography, let's stick it in your bag, because mornings I've got 2 children myself, mornings are frantic anyway. The last thing you want to be doing is looking for a history book. So it would be that, and possibly underneath it, as well as the timetable, maybe the homework timetable. So that we know when it's going to be set, and we know that when it's meant to be submitted, so that we don't have bottlenecks, because they're going to be points where that can put a lot of pressure on your home life if we're not aware of that. So it could be pack our bags, what was the homework, and then just trying to have some kind of cycle.
Yeah, no, that's really sensible. And actually, for a lot of our young people with, you know, varying different needs, you know, ADHD and autism, things like that, it just having that, you know, knowing what's happening now and next, and having that sort of in your head, you know, without forgetting these. Because I know for some, you know, young people, if they forget things because, you know, their brain is working overtime, and actually then that causes anxiety. So actually having that, you know, routine of preparation is really, really useful, isn't it?
Yeah, and I know that some secondary schools are using electronic systems for setting and recording homework. So things like class charts. So as a parent, you can download that app, and you can see what's been set.
Okay. Oh,
Um,
that's useful. Yeah.
be-
Yeah.
because some of the advice that we used to give to teachers is don't set homework in the last 2 minutes of the lesson,
Yes.
because children are kind of packing up, there's lots of noise, that
Yeah.
cognitive overload. Sorry,
Yeah.
what was I meant to do? And then they come home and they're trying to relay it to you, Chinese
Yeah.
whispers
Yeah.
style,
Yeah.
that they've not taken it on board. So it might be, are there any apps that we can download
Yeah.
to just monitor what homework's been set and when it's due in?
Yeah, no, that sounds really, really good. They're really, really sensible. And I think, I mean, we've covered this a bit, but just thinking about, I guess, the if there is a difference, but what kind of things should a parent expect? So if their child was on the SEN register at primary school, or has an EHCP, what kind of things? And I know it'll be specific to the individual plan, so it's hard to sort of do it as a, you know, as a more general thing, but just thinking about if they are, you know, on the SEN register or an EHCP, what kind of things should parents expect to happen in the sort of run up to starting in the secondary school?
I, that's, yeah, again, a tricky one. That
Mm,
you would hope that the Senko in the secondary school has communication with the Senko in the primary school.
yeah,
You would
yeah,
also hope the SEN files have been shared,
yes,
and
yeah,
and
yeah,
that at the very least there's an awareness of what the EHCP outcomes are,
yeah,
and
yeah,
what
yeah,
provision and support. Uh,
yeah,
the the thing to be realistic of is that support in a secondary environment may look different to a
yes,
primary environment,
yeah,
in that we might not always have a TA in every lesson,
yeah,
but part of it is working with the school, so that what does that young person need in order to engage, and
yeah,
how can we empower our teaching staff so that they're
yeah,
able to do that? Because there's the best intervention in a school is having a great teacher. So
yeah.
if we can empower our teachers with that knowledge and information, what strategies might work. um,
Mm,
and also, yeah, there is that thing that some things won't work. It doesn't mean that everything's gone
no.
to pot, but actually part of it is that we understand that that's not worked. That feeds into our assess, plan, do, review cycle.
Mm,
So
mm,
in some respects, we've got a clearer focus what's not worked. So it might give us a better understanding of what will work. But part of it will be that first term, how we're settling in, and a lot, I guess, from a parent, what to expect might be a settling into,
mm,
and just within 3-4 weeks being able to visit that school and just to find out
yeah,
how things are going, and then share
yeah.
what's been noticed at school, what have you noticed at home, and that information sharing, so that we've got more of a holistic understanding for the individual.
Mm, no, and I think that's really, really important, because I think that there's, you know, young people who perhaps coped really well in primary school and then go to secondary school, and you know, there's no real concerns about what the transition would be like, because you know they've you know managed and got on all right, and then they get to secondary school and it's just becomes really overwhelming, and things sometimes do fall, you know, decline quite rapidly. And I guess what you're saying is really just having those early conversations, and you know, if there's different behavior at home, it's, you know, communicating that as early as possible to try and, you know, figure out what's going on and to try and put those things in place, I guess, is the, you know, as early as possible, really.
Yeah, just having that shared understanding of
Mm,
the individual,
mm,
and just saying, look, what do we need to do in order to support this young person,
mm.
because it's a big step, moving to a larger environment. So it's part of it is assessing what's going on, gathering that information, and then possibly making further adjustments
Yeah,
as we go
yeah,
along. But we can only do that if we've got clear communication channels.
Absolutely, absolutely. And I think that's, you know, that's come through in all of this is, you know, just have those conversations really is really, really important. Um, I think, well, I mean, we've covered most of things that I was going to ask you, but is there anything else that you can think of that you could advise parents within this sort of this transition period? Anything we haven't covered?
Yeah, well, there were a couple of things that I was thinking of in that primary schools have kind of clear reading schemes, and you know that we do our reading.
Yes.
And whether that continues in secondary schools, but secondary schools will have their approach to reading. So part of it is,
yes,
if anything, reading's going to become maybe more challenging because we're going to be exposed to more mature texts, more mature language. So what is, if there's clear communication, what is the expectation? Should my child be reading?
That's a really good point. Yeah.
Just understanding that, because they've had structured reading up to year 6. Or there might be free readers, but there's still that expectation to read. But if anything, the challenges might increase. So what's the school reading scheme, and what can we do to support the young person? The other thing that I was thinking of when we talked about homework is, how much time should my child spend doing the homework? Because what we might not see, and this is coming from Asenco, is that we see someone's completed their homework. Brilliant, they've completed their homework. But what we've not seen is that might have taken an hour and a half to complete that. So then, as a teacher, I'm not aware of those challenges that young person's faced. And I might be that your homework is brilliant, but your classwork, you never finish. But what we can do is just have that understanding with the school. How much time should they spend on it? And if they spent 30 minutes on a piece, can I just, a proper 30 minutes, not but proper 30 minutes focused attention, can I signature the bottom and say this is it? Because in that way, if someone's struggling, then we need to know about that, rather than sometimes, is the homework of the young person or is it the parent's effort? And it's that kind of fine line. How much am I helping, but am I actually doing it? And how does that then feed into the teachers' assessment systems, that if they don't understand there's a problem, then they can't do anything?
No, that's really interesting actually that you brought that up, because actually I've had that with my youngest one, and she was getting homework, but she was spending so long on it and getting so frustrated with it. And it got to a point where I was, and I did speak to school, and they said, right, well, you do 30 minutes, and after that 30 minutes, that's it, you stop. And, once that was communicated with me and with her, things were much better. And she was, doing what she was able to do within her, limits, without having to feel the pressure of finishing it. So I think that's really important. But if I hadn't had that conversation, like you said, nobody would have known. So yeah, that's really important.
And then just a couple of other points might be, in terms of additional transition visits, if your child does have a TA, could they go to the secondary school with the young person? And then similarly, if we know who's going to support that young person in secondary school, could those TAs from the secondary visit the primary setting just to see the individual? Again, building up familiar faces.
No, that's really, really great. Thank you so much. This has been really, really, really useful, and I know it'll be really useful to our families who are starting this sort of journey of transition, or kind of within it. So thank you so much for your time.
Not a problem. I was thinking, because we've obviously prepared for this interview, even though it might not come across like that from my part. But what we have seen is that we were talking about transition, and I was thinking that what is the purpose of transition? And for an adult, it's almost similar to a staff induction. That what we want is that by the end of the induction, we would want staff feeling more confident. We'd want them to be aware of the systems, and we'd want them to be in a place where they can carry out their role effectively. So with that transition, it's being aware of the school systems, being aware of how things operate, so that if I've got that awareness, I'm empowered, and I'm not learning by mistakes because the system's not clear. But the greater that clarity is, then I can understand what I need to do, so that I'm more able to function within that learning environment.
No, that's really, really true, actually, isn't it? And actually, with a staff induction, you kind of have all the bits that you go through to make sure that the person's, you know, familiar and knows what they're doing and things like that. So it's kind of, and then, you know, thinking of children going to school, they need the same thing, don't they, really, to, you know, to go through all those steps to learn what it is and the expectations and that kind of stuff. So I like, again, that's a really good, you know, representation of it. I like that.
No, it's just a reflection. We want pupils and students to be able to operate at their optimum level, and there obviously needs to be things in place for them to be able to do that. Brilliant.
Thank you so much.
Not a problem. Hopefully that was useful. And again, it is just that communication. There'll be things that don't always go to plan, but it's just addressing that as early as possible. And yeah, just where possible, trying to involve the young person as much, so that they've got their voice.
Absolutely.
So that we can help with them with their ongoing independence and development.
Brilliant. Thank you so much.
Not a problem.